Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. You know, I've been out of town for a couple of weeks on vacation. What have you been doing without me?
It's been difficult. It's been very difficult.
It's been a challenge. Been a challenge, yes. I'm glad to hear that. You know, Paul, I've been thinking a lot lately about kind of a combination, our American love affair with knowledge and ideas that are measurable, or what is frequently referred to as scientific proofs. They're so important, it seems, in our culture. Unfortunately, too many influential leaders focus on what I call so-called facts while pretty much ignoring the eternal value of wisdom. Today, I'm looking forward to chatting with Terry about the place of wisdom in our everyday life, sort of lessons learned from a couple of guys that have spent a few decades on this planet. Now, Terry Hershey, as most of you know, is our most regular guest. And if you don't know Terry, he is a prolific writer, conference keynote speaker, renowned landscape architect, and spiritual advisor. And so with that, let's bring on Terry. Yo, Hersh.
Hey, Charles. How are you?
I am good. You know, I've been on vacation and I had a 1-hour time change and I'm still recovering. You know, I go with 10-hour time changes and it doesn't take me long to recover. Give me 1 hour and I'm toast. I have no idea. Old age.
So you're not happy that 2 times out of the year when we go back or whatever?
No. I want it to be consistent all the time.
Oh.
I'm an all day daylight savings guy.
Oh.
But I don't live in the radical extremes of light like you do. You know, it's so much lighter in daylight savings time. I mean, it's like, 10 or 10:30 for you guys.
It's 10, close to 10.
Well, yeah. Alaska was 10:30 when we were in Alaska.
Yeah, Alaska would be 10:30, 11, but in the wintertime, it's 4:15 and it's dark.
Yeah, no, not me. Give me the light. Give me the light. Let my light shine, Hershey, as you would say. Spill it into the world.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if you want to live someplace weather-wise in the United States, this is the place to live right now.
Yeah, if you like cold. But it's nice now. We were there and it was very nice.
No, I'm just saying, this time of year, it's heaven.
Oh, yeah, it is.
72 or 74 every day. And
beautiful, and it's just beautiful, the landscape. You know, we stayed with friends that had a view of the Puget Sound.
Come on, do a sentence. What's it like when you look out your window and you see the Puget Sound, the land, and the mountains across the way?
Well, it's awesome. But you know what I found, Terry? And this has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but you know what I found? The very first day I saw their view, I was enamored. The second day, I was less than half enamored. And I wonder, does it just get regular where you don't even notice that you have a spectacular view?
So you don't know the old story that I've told. It's a story about a monastery, a Zen monastery in the mountains, somewhere in the Himalayas, or there was a spectacular place, high up. And so their view is 360. And in a monastery, you live in a meditative state. In other words, you see the sacred in all of that. And what they realized was because that was a 360 view, it became sort of...
you just don't notice it. It's habitual.
So this monastery built a wall around the monastery, and then they had a few places where there were windows you could stop and see the view.
Terry, I've been to places like that have blocked the view with walls and then put windows that look like paintings. They look like art forms. They're spectacular. They draw your attention to what you wouldn't ordinarily see.
All they wanted was giving someone the permission or invitation to stop, which is that's all about. And
that sort of leads into what I want to talk about today, about permission to stop, permission to reflect, permission to contemplate. And I want to chat about, when I told you what I was going to chat about, your first comment was, well, what are we going to say? Well, we will see, because I'd like to chat today about wisdom, but wisdom is opposed to our American love affair with knowledge-based decision-making. Now, wisdom certainly includes knowledge, but goes much further. I read this and I liked it. Wisdom is the ability to contemplate and act thoughtfully using knowledge, experience, understanding, and compassion. And I think the idea of acting thoughtfully is something that we are not taught to do, and it is not as habitual as we would like. And I think wisdom is the personal acceptance and integration that relies on a set of preconceived values that we over time have made a part of our deepest nature. And I kind of want to talk about wisdom and the incorporation into who we are. It's much like your thought, Terry, on authenticity. Does any of that so far ring with you?
Yeah, because the bigger picture, the framework of that is that what you're saying about wisdom is that wisdom requires a paradigm shift in terms of how we measure.
Yes.
In other words, and so how we measure determines where we tether our identity and our value, and that determines how we see the world. So, for example, if I tether, I weigh and measure, Rabbi Abram Heschel,
right,
said the higher goal of spiritual living is not to amass a wealth of information, to face sacred moments.
To face and embrace, and let them become.
In other words,
it's become part
to
of
be
you.
Here, to be grounded here.
Yes.
And so the paradigm, and so a lot of it is getting to ask, what paradigm have I been living with? You talked about having enough information. I forget what you used for that paradigm, but it's the same with a world we live in where efficiency is supposed to be the paradigm, prioritized over being present, wonder, or noticing.
And it's all hung up on productivity. Efficiency is.
Just think of the medical system, and it's so hard for the medical people now because now efficiency drives the symptom, and we want to heal people. So now we're talking wisdom in some way because we want to be available, but our systems are at odds with that.
Absolutely.
In other words,
because they're
interested. Say we want that, but the system doesn't allow that.
And the system has a whole different objective than healing.
Correct.
Yeah, the system.
So I was thinking, as I'm running through my head, I was thinking wisdom. I was wondering whether I've done any writing about wisdom. And I remember a story I did in Sabbath Moment about there's a older, let's call her a wise woman. Okay, here we go. A wise woman. She's traveling the mountains, and she sees a stream, and there's a stone, a very precious, valuable stone. And so she picks it up, and the next day in her travels, she meets another traveler who's hungry and needy. And so the woman, wise woman, she's going to share her food. No problem. Opens her bag. The hungry traveler sees this stone and says, "Oh my God!" So says to the woman, "Can I have the stone instead?" She says, "Sure, it is. It's your stone." So the guy's leaving, and I'm in heaven now. I've got precious, it's worth enough for security for a lifetime. And then a few days later, he hunts her down. Says, "I've been thinking, I know how valuable the stone is. I want to give it back to you because I'd like something that's even more precious than the stone. I want to know what you have that allowed you to give this to me in the first place."
Ah, isn't that beautiful? It sort of goes hand in hand with a definition that I found that I like this, and it's a comparison between the wise person and the fool, which is typical in wisdom literature, especially in biblical wisdom literature. Solomon and in the Apocrypha, the wisdom of Solomon, and it goes something like this: The wise person operates according to values and understanding, and the unwise or the fool is driven by impulse or the influence of external forces that enhance temporal needs, not long-term needs.
No, so now we're talking. So in other words, we're driven because our identity is not tethered. Our identity is not grounded. In other words, we're owned by something other than ourselves.
And what would that be, Terry?
Well, if I have a fragile ego, I'm going to react to everything. I'm going to be in pursuit of something I think I don't have. Because I don't believe, my answer is the title of one of my books. So this part of your podcast is brought to you by one of my books called The Gift of Enough. Don't believe in the gift of enough.
That is so true. And you sort of segued into the direction I really would like to kind of land on for the remainder of the podcast, which I am very into this idea, and I have no idea what you think of it. So this could be a fascinating conversation, and it could be a 2-minute conversation. But I believe this, that first we must understand that wisdom begins with a personal choice. Wisdom does not happen without you attempting to access it. And I put it this way, you either live reactively or you live according to what you value. Now that assumes that you have contemplated what you value. That was
yes. Contemplate what you value. What I value is I find permission to be at home in this Terry and the sufficiency that is there deep down inside, I can begin to be in touch with wisdom that is available. If I assume none of that is there and I need to go outside of Terry to find it, then my fragile ego wins out. And your verb is exactly right. I react to everything. Why? Because I don't have ownership. I don't have ownership into who this Terry is. It's at the mercy of. It's at the mercy of whatever is around me.
Yeah.
That's what I love about that old woman. She was not at the mercy. She had the freedom to make those choices. There we are. Back to your word again. Choices, correct.
Yeah, choice is a big word in my vocabulary. I was thinking of something else that I had put down, that there are 3 sources of wisdom in something that I read: what you know, what you feel, and what you contemplate, and then acting on what you most value. And you know that through knowledge, through emotions, and through reflection and contemplation, and that requires a personal decision and a personal commitment to finding time to do that. You know, it's to live wisely is to set aside time to reflect and contemplate on our life. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's certainly in other words, you're committed to that because you're willing to be open. If deep down your identity is intact, then you're willing to be open to. You're not intolerant of things that you're learning and things that you're benefiting from. Different ways that you're changing as you develop. Yes, absolutely.
I like that you're not intolerant. It's sort of listening or taking in life with a disregard for disbelief, that you have to
exactly, the wisdom, the wise part of me, reactive part of me says, what the hell are you thinking? The wisdom part of me says, that's interesting. I wonder where that came from.
You know, and I'm going to depart a bit from wisdom and talk about that. being able to depart from what we think. And you and I talked about doing a show sometime on having dialogue that is coming from two different positions, but that we can have dialogue, we can have open dialogue, we can try to learn from one another, we can share our views, and it does not disrupt relationship. You know, that reminds me of what little I know of the 50 years ago party system in America, where the left and the right would actually work together on some things. Not everything.
No. Yes, a lot.
Yeah, and we can't have that now, because I've read Democrats and Republicans, new congresspeople, their first meeting is with the head of their party that tells them never compromise with the opposite party. And
but this back to the wisdom thing is I don't need to convert you.
No, that's beautiful.
See, that's the whole point about wisdom. The wisdom is I don't need to convert you.
You know, I listen to Fox News. I've watched Fox News and CNN or MSNBC for the kicks and jiggles, or whatever they call it, kicks and giggles. But I think they're TV. They're Paul Crouch. They're like TV evangelists. Each one trying to evangelize their position for the rest of us to adopt, and rather than presenting news that we can come to our own conclusions, they not only want to present the news and the facts, they want to tell you, now here's how you interpret them. And that is not wisdom. That is falling prey to the desire and character and goals of someone else. Wisdom is a whole lot different. Wisdom is, let's go back to my radical thought that wisdom begins, what I am advocating, and I know this is kind of radical to some, but I believe that wisdom begins with a personal choice. You choose to either live reactively or to live according to what you value. And in some senses, wisdom, and I'm even as I'm pondering, as I'm writing in this new book, I'm talking, it really is all about you. And it's how you receive information, how you process information, and how you act upon that information that you've received and processed. It does begin with you. Now, do I believe there is a universe that gives us data and brings situations into our lives that we have to act with? Of course I do believe in that. But I think at the end of the day, it's the old Viktor Frankl thing that you can't control the situation, but you control your choices in that. And I think wisdom begins with a choice. Do I choose to let circumstances determine my behaviors, or do I choose to let my values regarding those circumstances impact my behaviors?
So, given that way of looking at it, when you're in that place and you're not reacting, what is the soil that grows the values that you tether yourself to? Where do those come from?
Yeah, that's I've got a chapter in my book that I want to write. I don't know if you're familiar with the title, but I want to call it Soul Gardening. And that is tendering the soil. Do we have
Actually, it's the dirt. My whole thing is it's the dirt that matters. That is exactly what you're saying. Okay, I'm going to choose, but I can't choose what to grow unless I have the dirt.
Unless you nurture that soil.
That's your values thing.
Yeah.
How do you, the wise people, for example, that old woman that gave that away, what enabled her to have those values? What predicated those values?
This is what I was thinking about, what predicates those values. And it's about personal choice, and that fits right in line with what you're saying. The first thing, we have three choices that are going to determine, do we act wisely or reactively? One is, how do we receive what life offers? what kind of soil do we have? How have we prepared our soil? Do we have, in the terms of the gospel metaphor that is really good, do we have hard soil that new seeds just fall and wash away, or if we have weedy soil, or have we taken care of that soil so that it leads us to openness, not simply to support what we already believe, because supporting what we already believe is not really learning anything. So it's receiving what life offers. It's in how do we process that input that we've gotten. We see what works, what doesn't work, what is healthy, what is good for myself, what is good for my family, what is good for my society, because I'm a cultural, social being, not social in friendships, but in society. I'm social in friendships, but also social in society. And thirdly, how we act on that, how we receive input, how we process input, and then how we act accordingly. And I think that receiving and that process, that's that internal part of us that is so critical that until I started doing contemplative prayer, I don't know, I spent as much time reflecting as I do now.
Yes. Okay. I'm listening. And because me, Charlie, as a speaker, I have to dial it down so I can give it as a speech. And so.
Okay, give what I said as a speech.
How do we receive what life offers? 3 points. As you know, a good preacher has 3 points to every sermon. And here's from what you've just said, here's your 3 points. The first is openness.
Right.
Am I available?
Right.
Am I open? Am I willing to learn? Am I willing to even adjust the soil? The process part is interesting because for me, the process part, the word I would use there is humility. There's no need for you to brag about who you are. In other words, the ego is not something at stake now because of the first one. You don't need to be somebody you're not. And so that enables you to process. You're not shut down.
I love that. That really does.
And if you're not shut down, then your third point is you're available, embrace empathy and mercy in a world that needs both.
And somewhere in there, I don't know if it's a fourth point or if it's subsumed under one of the others. Certainly, there is a one that is it's receiving, it's processing, it's acting, but it is at all times considering who I am and how I am authentic, because I may be different than everybody else. And that is, I'm reading Brené Brown's book on vulnerability right now, or Daring Greatly or something like that.
That's her newest one, yeah.
And she talks quite a bit about being honest with yourself and understanding who you are and how that fits. That's why I'm calling this thing a way of being. I'm finding, Terry, I'm having a really hard time articulating that as I'm writing that, a way of being, but it is like it goes beyond my brain and beyond my conscience, and it's almost an unconscious. I'm feeding into my unconscious. I can't access it, directly once it goes into my unconscious, but my unconscious then manipulates everything that I do. There's a deep part of me that I may not be able to write down. These are the 12 facts about Charlie, but my value system.
The thing is, and this is important because this goes back to sufficiency and the ability to be enough. In other words, if my internal well-being is grounded. In other words, I don't need to say, oh my God, what's wrong with me? There's insufficiency and I need to go find it. That is immediately reactive. So if you go from a grounded place, you can begin to choose the things that you're talking about. I can begin to choose to learn and to be. All of those things.
You know what I want to do is we've had a good half of sort of philosophy around it. I've got 3 suggestions that I want you to add to, but as I've pondered this and read a bit on this in the last few days. I've got 3 suggestions, but what I want to do is, since it's kind of a change in emphasis, I want to take a brief break and come back fresh on these 3 ways to act wisely. Hi there, this is Charlie Hedges, and you are listening to The Next Chapter as I chat with my good friend Terry Hershey, and we are talking about reactive, impulsive living as opposed to wise living, which has a great deal to do with values, personally deep-held values, and trying to maintain some kind of authenticity to that without the pressure of society and all of the voices hammering at us that if we don't believe this, we're less than. And Terry is so strong on that, we are enough. I love that. But, so much of what's going on in the media and going on in our information is that we are less than, and unless we catch up to what they're preaching, we're not worthy. And I like the values. I like values, contemplation, reflection, owning, making these part of my eternal character, nature, and then living on them. Do you have any comments on that before I go on, Terry?
Go for it.
Okay.
The owning, simply that. It's an affirmation of I own it. In other words, it's not outside of me.
Oh no! It is a critical part of inside of me. If I recognize it, if I nurture it, if I have the soil to receive it, and I have the capability of nurturing it. Otherwise, it just goes, in one ear and out the other.
Well, yeah. If I don't own it, I'm back to the reactive, because it's all if only I should. And the word should. I mean, it all comes in there.
Oh, man, I was just talking to a friend in Africa that I coach, that she's owns a marketing company, and I work with her, and the business arena is quite different in Uganda than it is here. But she had I must do and I should do. We spent an hour unpacking must and should. Just say, and I'm bad. It's just, these are just not healthy ways of living.
No, that's worth stopping at, because this is what's interesting. In other words, as soon as I don't affirm the sufficiency or enoughness where I begin, I'm grounded, the soil is enough, then I automatically label not only my identity, but my value. As soon as you label anything, you dismiss it.
Yes, especially when it's performance-oriented and you're not living up to the performance orientation.
Exactly, because as soon as it's about performance, it's not about presence.
Love the word presence. Okay, I said 3 ways. I just added one after we talked because I remember. So 4 ways to act wisely. We've kind of covered a bit, but I think the first step to wisdom is to know yourself. And it's knowing your strengths, your limitations, knowing your history of experience, and trying to put all that together to determine what is me internally, my strong attributes, and as well as my limitations, things that I would like to work on. How is it that we can, I use Scripture as my compass to help me understand knowing myself. In your mind, what does it mean to know yourself?
I'm not afraid to be honest.
But how do you get past the fears that allows you to be honest? Because we have so many fears of being honest because we have been told we're unacceptable.
Well, and we have so many things that we can wrestle with in this world that then get labeled that way.
Oh.
No, emotional issues, depression issues, melancholy issues, diagnoses of all kinds.
Yes.
And as soon as that happens, and or even go to in our religion, you're one of us, you're not one of us. In other words, as soon as that happens, as soon as I assume the diagnosis is my identity, and the day for me, see, as a person who I use the word wrestled because that's the good, accurate verb, wrestled with depression much of my life. The person who's done that, the day that I was able to say, wait a minute, it doesn't own me. Is it real? Yes. Does it have behavioral attributes? Yes. Is it recognizable? Yes. Is it all of who I am? No. The day I was able to say that, I was not afraid to say so. Know yourself part is okay.
But it takes repetitive, doesn't it? It's not a one-time experience. You have to experience several times over until it becomes habitual. Otherwise, it was a one-time experience. This has to be something that becomes habit with you.
Not just habit, Charlie, daily.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And you know this. You're a 12-stepper. You know this.
Yeah.
This is what you do. But the point is, and someone says, well, why do you have to do it every day? And you say, this day's a new day. And guess what? I get to choose this. This is a choice.
Yeah.
This is not a reactive statement.
Oh, that's so good to hear somebody singing my song. Every day is a choice.
It's a choice. But it's not reactive. Guess what? I get to wake up. I get to choose it.
My wake-up mantra that I got from my Roman Catholic spiritual director, and that he suggested every day I wake up and I won't go into the whole story of Elijah having the vision of Jesus, and Jesus says, who am I going to send? And Elijah says, here I am, Lord, send me. And my spiritual director suggested that those are my waking, and my life coach suggested the same words. Wake up every morning and you say, here I am, Lord, and just ready to receive what the divine may have in mind for me, and it comes in the form not in divine revelation, but it comes in the form of life situation. This is it's not like I get texts from God. It's not that.
And the best part about that is when you say that, the divine doesn't say, wait a minute, you're so messed up.
Yeah.
The divine just says, go for it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that is sad, I think, is for the most part, wisdom is wasted on the old. It's too bad that you can't, but it just takes years of messing it up to be able to get that, understand what a healthy path would be, and that's why I hope that we can listen to, we can get, that we have younger listeners, and I know we do, that can learn to embrace more of this. Let me go to my second one. So you know yourself, that's fine, that's good, you got that, you're okay. But I think what's equally important, and perhaps even more important, is to accept that self that you know. So many times we know ourself, but it is what we consider an unacceptable self because it is not in line with what culture teaches us. I'm a huge believer in self-acceptance, self-love, self-care.
And self-care, that's my mantra.
That's what you teach in healthcare systems.
Yeah.
How do we get to accept ourselves when we are taught by society and by religion that you are deeply flawed? You are not deeply wonderful. You're not deeply beautiful. You're deeply flawed.
I said at the very beginning, it's a paradigm shift. This is a new paradigm. Yourself isn't predicated on the labels attached to you. Are those accurate? Some of them are accurate, I suppose. Yourself is deeper than that. That's what my grandmother taught me about me. I had a litany of labels that I carried with me whenever I was with her, but she simply called me darling.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Terry. And had you sit on the swing.
Had me sit on the swing.
Yeah, beautiful.
So
story.
that's the way I visualize it. I carried all these labels with me. But what about this? What about this? What about it doesn't really matter. It's a swing set and her voice.
So you know it's almost a revolutionary, contrary thinking, accepting yourself, because we have a world of judging you. Everybody judges you.
And the other thing is, people say, "Well, man, if you accept this, why would you? There's so many things you need to change." That's duh. You can't change anything until you see it. You can't see anything until you love it. You can't love anything until you know it.
There you go. You know, there's an old, I think it may be even Augustinian, but I'm not sure. The quote is, "The heart cannot delight in what the mind rejects as false." And if you keep rejecting all of this as false, then you can't embrace it. You can't engage in it, because it is formed, even though it feels right, it is interpreted as incorrect by others. That leads me into my third point. And my third point is, you know, these are all very related, so they're just sort of, you know, saying the same thing in a couple of different ways. But I like this one that I read, and that you need to think for yourself and avoid thinking like the crowds. And we live in a group identity culture that we are, you know, part of one group, whether it be left, right, our ethnic, our religious beliefs, and those are all groups that's crowd thinking. That's not thinking for yourself. And I think this is a big difficult thing to do, because when you think for yourself, you're going to experience a lot of rejection. You cannot make other people happy thinking for yourself.
Well, my thing with a lot of people is simply just to start with that question: what do you think? And a lot of people, what do you mean? What do you mean? Because I just read a book. I just had to look for it. It's called The Chaos Machine. It's about reality of algorithms and what algorithms have done to us. Because algorithms is about groupthink, 100%. And if we're on social media, the algorithms connect us with other people who, quote, think like we are supposed to be thinking. In other words, so there's the algorithms. There's no space for asking the question, what do you think?
And are you even aware of asking that question? Because I don't think we're even made aware of asking that. That's even an alternative.
That's the paradigm shift again. We're not. See, the paradigm shift is start with what do you think, as opposed to here's the lane you're in. Are you in it or not? And you're thinking, whoa, I'm already in the lane.
Yeah. It reminds me of something, you know, you remember Timmons back in the 80s and early 90s, the minister that I worked for at the large church. And he used to have a saying that I think still applies today. You know, it's just, you know, he's trying to draw attention to his statements, but I think there's something about it. And he would say 5% of the people think, 15% of the people think they think, and 80% of the people would rather die than think. And what he was just saying is that we live in a culture of adopters. We live in a culture that has their egos and self-regard has been so broken down, and they are thriving for acceptance from other people, or not thriving on it, but desiring acceptance from other people, that they're not only are they afraid to think for themselves, but they don't even know it's possible.
Yeah. I don't know anything about percentages. I mean, I'd be...
Yeah. I know.
I'd be the guy to stand up in the congregation and say, makes you say that?
There's plenty of times. I just had, before we went on vacation, one of the ministers said, well, the first covenant that God made with his people was the Abrahamic covenant. And I said, that's wrong. How do you say that? You're a minister. You studied Scripture. Don't you know the Noahic covenant? I mean, we have a rainbow to remind us of the covenant. I mean, how can you possibly, so I wanted to stand up and say, you're nuts, but I didn't do it, although half of them would expect me to do.
That would be a great podcast for me and you to do one day is, what are the times in all of your church services where you've wanted to stand up and say, they're nuts?
Yeah. Way too many times. So my last one is this. And again, you can see they're all interrelated. But truly be open to seek understanding regarding what you don't currently understand. And that is where you and I think, have a very healthy relationship in that we have sort of not so much personal values, but social values that are that differ. But I know I don't understand where you're coming from all the time, and you don't understand where I'm coming from. And we may have heated debates, but there is certainly open, tell me what you're thinking. I love the way you're challenged, and this does have something to do with wisdom. And that, as I was talking about political policies, you challenged me to say, okay, you say you don't like this guy's behavior, but you like his policies, name them. And I couldn't. And so you forced me to go through and evaluate the policies of other people and to articulate my own either policies or beliefs that I think should be going on in the United States government. That was so helpful because that helped me understand, or at least seek to understand, what I didn't understand.
And now we can have a conversation about those, which is great. But my response to the last one, the open to seek one, your fourth one, is because my ego's not at stake here. You don't need to win.
Whoa. That's almost the title of the show. That's a great statement. The ego is not at stake, is it? This is not about wisdom. This is not about
wisdom.
It's not about winning.
Definition. The ego is not at stake here.
Right. That's, Terry, that's really, really well stated, that this is not the small self, as we talk about in the contemplative tradition, the small self and the larger self. The small self is all about self-protection. It's
that's good. I like that. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
So wisdom is a value system that you have consciously endorsed. You have consciously eaten the manna to where it becomes part of your inner being, part of who you are. And then it's just a matter of saying, when you make a big decision, saying, does that represent me or does that represent my ego?
If you work on just being grounded, it just spills that way. And you look back and you say, oh, that was wise.
Well, let's wrap it up with that. And what do you mean by being grounded? I think that's a very important word, but it's also rambles off our tongues very easily.
So tell me the places and spaces where you are affirmed for being this you. The sufficiency and the enough.
Do you want to know my genuine answer on that?
Yes.
Self-affirmation. I rarely get it from other people because it runs contradictory to what most people think. So I can look like an outlier. I can look like somebody who doesn't fall into line with what everybody else is thinking. So it's not always, there is this thing of being ready for rejection, because it is not always accepted by others, but it is accepted by me, and I can live with myself. It doesn't mean I don't face the pain, doesn't mean I don't like rejection, but I don't like going against my core more than I don't like rejection.
When I ask that question of anyone, the answer is going to be uniquely different for every person, but a lot of people get asked it.
Come back to, and I'll wrap it up, we come back to, as we take a look at all of this, is I have this strong belief of late that I'm writing on, that it is all about you. People say your life is not about you. Well, that's just wrong. Your life is all about you and the choices you make. Are you impacted, influenced by other people, by situations, by the universe, by the divine? Absolutely, you have all of that input. That's why we talked about, nurturing your soil. We have all of that input that goes into the soil, but we at the end of the day have the choice of what we're going to do with that.
I like choice.
Okay, my friend, it's always chatting with you. It was fun. Tell everybody we saw each other over the weekend for a brief time, and it was delightful to see you. And Nancy, love Nancy to death. Well, maybe not to death. I love her a lot, and it's so delight to be with you guys. Thanks for being on the show, Hersh.
Appreciate it, Charles.
Okay, man. I want to thank our listeners for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. Until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.